For a third year, the 2025 version of Best in Fayette. Nominations will kick off in June, followed by voting in July. To learn more, visit bestinfayette.com. The 2024 Best in Fayette books are still available and can be picked up for free at locations such as WMBS Radio, Shop and Save Walnut Hill, Armstrong in Connellsville, Bittersweet Cafe in Farmington, and the Casino at Nemacolin. For more information, visit bestinfayette.com.
This spring, history comes alive in Fayette County. Join us Friday, May 30th as we commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Marquis de Lafayette's final visit to our region, honoring the man whose courage and leadership helped secure America's independence during the Revolutionary War. From his bravery alongside George Washington to the ideals he carried across continents, Lafayette left a legacy that lives on right here in our name, Fayette County. The day begins in Brownsville and continues with a special ceremony at 2:30 p.m. in front of the Fayette County Courthouse in Uniontown. Then, cap off the celebration with a family picnic and live concert at Washington Run Park in Perryopolis, featuring music from Tim Litvin. Food, music, and fun for all ages. Don't miss this chance to celebrate our history, our community, and the enduring spirit of freedom. Mark your calendar. Friday, May 30th. Learn more at Fayette County PA 250th on Facebook.
I got no direction now. I'm gonna find my way somehow.
And now we welcome Wendy O'Brien from the Proden and O'Brien Law Firm and Josh here from WMBS for a couple of things with Wendy and Josh. All right, guys.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thanks, TJ.
It's great to be
You're
here
welcome.
Today.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Wendy.
You too.
So for those who are just joining us or maybe weren't able to tune in with us last month, Wendy is doing a show with us every month. It's pretty awesome. It's called a couple of things with Wendy
Yeah.
and Josh, and that is a throwback to something Wendy likes to say a lot.
Say it all the time.
She'll be like, well, a couple of things. So it's perfect. A couple of things with Wendy and Josh. And we join you every second Thursday at 3:15. And last time we talked a lot about online presence and social media.
Correct.
Very interesting. And
Yep.
you have an interesting topic this time. What's our topic today?
Today we're going to talk about money. And it might be a little controversial because I am going to say why you do not pay enough in child support.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't care what you're paying, it's not enough.
Okay, then there you go. So you hear it here from an expert, and just so we're on the up front, this is not legal advice. Every case is different. You should contact an attorney if you want to discuss specifics of your case, ramifications, issues, all those types of things. We're just here to talk generally about some of the legal things that you may want to have some more information about as you're trying to make informed decisions. That's kind of what we're doing. So you don't pay enough in child support. Tell us why that is, what that means.
Well, listen, so everybody complains about paying child support, but kids are expensive. They're extremely expensive. And I can tell you without a doubt, one of the most difficult financial experiences you would ever have would be going through a separation and a divorce. Mm-hmm. And that's on both sides. It's with husband, with wife, whoever's primary custodian, or even if you're sharing custody of your kids. It's going to be financially burdensome. But you know who shouldn't suffer? And this is what I always tell my clients. Your kids shouldn't suffer. Why should their lives change because you and your spouse don't want to live under the same roof together anymore?
Right.
And they shouldn't. And I hear a lot of, how do I get child support reduced? What can I do to get child support reduced? We're going to talk today about child support. We're going to talk a little bit about how it's calculated. We're going to talk about why it's calculated that way. And we're going to talk about some other forms of support too. Alimony, spousal support, and something a lot of you may never have heard of, which is filial support.
Okay, I don't know that, so I'm interested to hear it. Yeah, so no, and I think that you bring up a really interesting point. Obviously, we're not here to judge anybody, And times are tough for a lot of people. And when you have to pay that child support, it can be tough.
Yeah.
But you ultimately have to think about the child,
Correct.
not the adult.
Yeah.
The adult's responsibility is to care for that child. So therefore, the money's got to be there for the needs of the child.
Yeah, it does. And if you take a step back and look at it in a different light, and that's what I'm hoping to get across today, is maybe take a step back and put it in perspective. Why am I paying child support? Why am I paying spousal support? It's honestly a privilege that you're able to pay these things.
Yeah.
These are difficult times, and you have the monetary capacity to support your loved
Right.
ones.
Right.
Because at one point, your spouse was your loved one.
Right.
And your children are your loved ones, then you should be honored to do that. And you
Right.
should. If you can, go above and beyond.
Yeah. So that money that you're paying actually would have been money that was in an account that was being utilized by the family to pay for all those things anyway.
Yeah.
So it really isn't paying. You're just doing what is your responsibility and what you should want to do if you care for your kids.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you should have, take a look at yourself and what you can, get rid of. Can you get a smaller car payment?
Right.
Can you cut out some of your extracurriculars so that your children continue to play, travel hockey or
Yes.
maybe travel softball? I know that that's big around here
Yeah.
too. Put yourself, aside and allow your children to continue their lives.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, who can receive child support?
Yes.
This is an interesting thing. So obviously a mom and a dad,
Mhm.
both are entitled to file for child support. But grandparents or other third parties that are caring for your children and who have custody of your children, including like CYS, if
Okay.
your children are dependent, they can file child support against you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Child support is also something that is not retroactive back to when you separate. So if you need child support, it's really important that you go and file as soon as you separate, because you don't get to backdate it from
Right.
2 years ago when you decide to split up. It's only in Pennsylvania. It's only active from the time you file it.
Yeah.
File for child support. And then moving forward.
So, a question out of the gate. So, if you have a divorce that has just taken place or a separation, this is where you're at. What if both parties, you have joint custody, both parties file for it? What happens then? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, it does happen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times parents do have pretty close incomes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's not unusual. In actuality, it will probably cross each other out. But if there is one parent with a higher monthly gross income, they may have to pay some child support, even though they're sharing 50-50 custody.
Yes.
Now, that is a big deduction you get in the formula.
Mhm.
The formulas are set by the state. You do get a big deduction if you do share 50-50 custody. In fact, if you share 40% or more custody, which is overnights, not I pick up at 8 a.m. and drop off at 9 o'clock at night.
So overnights are factored into that.
Yeah, it's overnights.
Okay.
If you have 40% of the overnights or more, you're going to get a pretty big deduction in your child support.
Okay, so that's already factored into it
Yeah.
too. But as you said, so it might actually make sense for folks that are going through this situation, if they are actually in a 50-50 situation, and they know, oh, well, my ex makes roughly the same as me, they may want to counterfile to just protect themselves. Because then if it ends up being a couple $100, it might not be as brutal as it would have been the other way. And you know that they also have money to put towards the child.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to is, wherever the child is sleeping or children are sleeping, a majority of the overnights, we want to make sure that parental custodian has sufficient funds to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
The kids are expensive. I just, for example, these days with their schoolwork, I don't care where your kid goes to school, they need internet at home.
Yeah.
And internet is not cheap.
No.
And the Wi-Fi on your phone just doesn't even cut it to handle what they have to do online for their school.
Right. It's different than when you and I went to school.
Absolutely. I didn't
The internet didn't matter.
No.
Not at all.
No, that's funny. I was talking to my daughter the other day about encyclopedias.
Yeah.
I said, I didn't have Google.
No, I had to go look it up.
Yeah.
In a library.
We had to look in a book.
Yes.
We had to look in a book for our information.
And we're going down a rabbit hole, but it's true. I just said it the other day. There's so many little silly things that we
Yeah.
know so much about now because if we're just generally interested, we immediately Google it.
100%.
And in the past, you wouldn't have done it. We
Right.
wouldn't have headed off to the library to find out who that was or what that was.
Nope, it's at the fingertips.
It is.
And
It's
we
completely
need to know.
different.
Like,
Yeah,
we need to know.
we
like,
totally do.
immediately. Yeah.
So what are some of the factors? You said grandparents, CYS. What are some of the factors that are considered when a judge is looking at a child support case?
Sure. So they're definitely looking at your incomes.
Okay.
And if you don't have an income, they're going to look at why you don't have an income. Are you disabled or are you just not working?
Right.
Do you care for an infant or a child under the age of 2? Those are factors they'll consider. But if you don't have an income, you can be actually assessed an income, which means you have an earning capacity.
Okay.
What is your education? What is your employment background?
Wow. Does that happen often?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot.
That's interesting.
A
See,
lot.
that's something I had no idea.
Yeah. And
So they're kind of holding people accountable.
100%.
Yeah.
So I've seen so many times where somebody has a very well-paying job and they voluntarily quit that job to go work, somewhere else. Sheets pops in my head,
Yeah.
which is lower paying, but they want their child support calculated at that Sheets income rather than what they were making on the oil and gas rig.
Right.
And the courts won't, they're gonna say,
Do they have to?
why?
Yeah.
Why
Do they have to
do
kind of
you-"
prove why they did it, or
Yeah, you have
like
to
so? If
have
you
a
had it,
really good reason.
let
why
me
you
ask
did
you
that.
this. So let's say the schedule worked out better and the child was like under the age of 2 at the time.
Mhm.
That might actually help you
It would, yeah.
rather than just saying I didn't feel like being out in the field every day.
Yeah. That's a big one. Is if you're the primary custodian of the children, and the other side isn't helping with the custodial care, and childcare is so expensive, it doesn't make sense for you to continue to
Yeah.
go out of town and work whatever
Yeah.
on an oil and gas rig for a week at a time.
Right.
That makes sense. You need to find a job at home where you can also raise your children.
Sure.
But the person who just wants to drop their income and go work somewhere else,
Right.
the court's going to hold you to that prior income.
And and then there's other pieces too. So we talk about the general care of the child.
Mhm.
What about like healthcare, extracurricular stuff,
Yeah.
all those stuff, supplies for the sports, travel?
Yeah, and that can all be taken into consideration. What are your children used to being involved in? And I think we've previously talked before about sports and extracurriculars, like the children that are involved in hockey, travel hockey, or travel softball. They have to go out of state, and often they're traveling all summer long.
Yeah.
To these games.
They're not always that close.
No, they're staying in hotel rooms. And these are all things that I've definitely had to litigate, where we've had to break down, how many games this parent took the kids to, how much this cost, and it can all be considered in a child support order. And it can get kind of, detailed and a little bit difficult to get all those numbers nailed down because they change constantly.
Sure.
But at the same time, you need to let your kids, continue their lifestyle because they've become accustomed to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not their fault that they're going through this.
So you said like you get down to those nuanced details. Are there reassessments? Is that a part of child care?
Yeah.
Or child custody as well?
Child support can be modified at any time there's a change in circumstances. Job
loss.
Job loss, because that during COVID we saw a lot of that.
Sure.
People lost
and
their
that was
jobs.
out of their control.
Yeah.
So while you're saying they need to pay more, in certain instances the judge is going to understand. It stinks.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. There's going to be times when it's completely understandable and justifiable.
Right.
One that pops in my head is I had a case one time. This was years ago, but it still stands true. Where the paying party was a driver.
Okay.
And he drove truck for a very large business. The company made a lot of money. He was very high up, and he got a DUI.
Oh.
And he lost his driver's license. So, of course, he lost his job.
Yeah.
And he got some other job. He did get a job, which was good.
Yes.
But it wasn't paying nearly what he should have been paying. And he tried to get his child support reduced. And there's actual case law and rules that, if you do something voluntarily, including get a DUI and lose your job because you have a DUI.
Don't drink and drive, kids.
Yeah. You don't get a reduction in your child support.
Yeah.
So he was held to that higher level of earning because that was his earning capacity for
Wow.
years and years and years.
That's really, really interesting information.
Yep.
And that does just underscore don't drink and drive.
No,
so if
definitely
you
not.
are just joining us, you are listening to a couple of things with Wendy and Josh. Wendy O'Brien from Proden O'Brien Law. We have a show every second Thursday of the month at 3:15 talking about some legal issues. Today we're talking about child support, and we're deep into it already.
Yeah, we're pretty into
Yeah,
it.
I'm very intrigued, interested. So let me ask you this before we get into I'm telling you, she's really good. Like, I like lists, but her lists are really good. I feel like I'm right back in college. She got all the indents and it's all broken down. Before we get back to that, so if you had to ballpark how much people pay in child support per child, like what is an average number?
So,
and what should it be?
Yeah. So first of all, you can easily go on to the Pennsylvania child support website. It's I think it's pachildsupport.com, and type in your incomes and get an estimate.
Okay.
But I did look this up because I thought this would be a good.
It's an interesting thing to think about.
It's a good thing to think about. So in Pennsylvania, the average medium income of a household is about $75,000.
Okay.
And
so you got two people earning about 40 to 50, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
And then, if you take that median income and you figure the average children in a household is 2, you're looking at a child support order, assuming that the payor makes maybe about 45 of that 75, and the payee makes about 30,000,
slightly smaller,
30,000, still making income. You're going to pay $819 a month in child support for those 2 kids.
And as you said, $819 sounds like a big bill.
Yeah.
But it really isn't a big bill.
Think about it. Does that even pay your rent? Does that pay your car payment?
No.
Does it pay your car insurance?
And all that these kids have to eat every day. They have to have clothing every day, shelter every day. They have to go to these extracurriculars. They have to have health care. They have to go to the doctor. I think it's kind of a low number.
And they all have a cell phone. I mean, I don't know what your cell phone bill is, but I know every kid I have on the line is another at least $100.
Yeah.
So it adds up so quickly. So I hear people complain a lot. Like, I want to know what they're doing with my child support money. And it's interesting, but Pennsylvania does not monitor that. You don't have to report what you're doing with your child support money. And so my favorite story is I like to tell people, because I have 3 children, Josh, we talked about this before. If I don't go get my nails done once a month,
and
I'm going to lose my mind.
And they look great. We talked about these last time. Last time they were all like rainbow spring colors. Now they're just a nice pink.
Yep, with some sparkles on it.
But that's something you like to do.
Yeah. So they'll come in and they'll say, she didn't buy this, she didn't buy this.
She got her nails done.
She's getting her nails done. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's probably how she keeps her sanity, from day to day.
Because she has to live too.
Yeah, she wants to have her time. And he, she or he, they both deserve their own time too.
Right.
But
they have to put the child first.
Do your kids have a roof over their head?
Right.
Are they getting to school?
Are they clothed properly?
Do they have shoes? Do they get to their activities? Right.
Are they eating?
Are they eating food?
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So this, and again, I know you got your outline, but now I have another question.
All right. Yeah.
So let's say I am party X and I'm paying $850 a month for the 2 children. I don't feel that money's being properly spent. What is my recourse? Is there any?
No.
What if I find proof? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I think that would fall back if you came to me, because I mean.
Yeah, if I came to you as an attorney,
if you were coming to me and said, "Look, I'm paying this much a month, but my kids are being neglected.
Right. Their shoes are broken.
Yeah,
they told me they didn't eat yesterday.
They don't have internet for their homework. They don't have food in their house.
Right.
First of all, we're going to report CYS. We're going to call CYS, and you're going to file a custody action.
Okay.
Because maybe you should be the primary
custodian. So it comes back to who should have them at that point. Yeah. So maybe not the money.
Yep.
But it's making sure your kids are okay.
Yeah. Your recourse isn't necessarily with child support.
Right.
In fact, there is no really good mechanism to measure where it's going.
And that makes sense because you don't want it to be, because really your argument isn't that you want your money back.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure the kids are okay.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. So from an outsider, non-attorney perspective, if you're paying child support and you're kind of keeping an eye on that, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
I think that's a healthy thing because you care about your kids.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're monitoring everything. Obviously, everybody lives and survives, but keeping a general eye that it seems like they're being well cared for.
Yeah, it does. a good way to police it on
Yeah.
your own.
Yeah.
You know, and your kids, the older they get, you're gonna know if they need things and aren't getting it.
Yeah.
But typically, I just think that our guidelines in Pennsylvania are extremely low.
So
And
are we low compared to other states though too?
yeah,
Yeah. Do you
yeah.
think that may come up eventually?
Possibly, it's possible.
Yeah.
But I think for the time being, when you got to change your perspective on why you're paying child support.
Yes. It's
You're-
not a bill.
No, it's your obligation as a parent.
Yeah.
As a parent, you are obligated to make this payment,
Right.
and your kids deserve it.
Right.
In fact, I think that leads me to my next point. Child support isn't waivable in the state of Pennsylvania, meaning mom can't just say, "Okay, I agree, I don't want child support," and then that's enforceable forever and ever.
Okay.
Because it's not her right to receive child support. It's the children's
Okay.
right to receive child support.
So if mom was trying to do a favor for dad, who she knows is down on his
Yeah.
luck, that doesn't fly necessarily.
Correct.
Because the kids are the ones that need cared for. It's
Yep.
not about them anymore.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to make sure people know is you don't have to file a divorce action to start a child support action, because a lot of people don't have the money to commence like a custody action or
Sure.
a child support action, or I'm sorry, a divorce action, but they need the support.
Okay.
You don't need
So
to-
that stuff can wait.
Yeah, that can wait. And you can go directly to our domestic relations office here in Fayette County. They are fabulous here. We have 3 wonderful conference officers. You'd be lucky to be in front of any of the 3 of them. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. And you can file your action that way.
Okay. So the recommendation is if you feel child support is something that's warranted, you should get to it right away.
Yeah.
So it starts at the time of separation?
Your right to file starts as soon as you no longer live under the same roof.
Okay.
But as soon as you won't receive it unless you go file.
Okay.
You do not get to date it back. Like if you decide, well, I'm gonna wait 6 months and see what happens.
You lost that time.
You lose that time. Yeah.
Okay.
You have to
And-
file.
And that kind of
to get-
makes
to start the clock.
I think that kind of again, I'm on the side of the kids, but I can understand
Yeah.
it to some degree. Because if you're trying to say, I need for these 6 months back, and you didn't take the proper step,
Yeah.
and that person's continued to live, they haven't been putting $800 aside,
No.
probably.
No.
So,
No. Definitely
yeah.
not. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So let's look here. I'm interested.
Well, the one thing we touched on, but I want to talk a little bit more on
Yeah.
health insurance.
Yeah.
That sometimes a child support order actually comes down to who's paying the health insurance.
Okay.
Because that can be really expensive
Oh, yeah.
if you don't have that through your employment.
Yes.
And it's amazing how many people don't.
We all know how
Yeah.
health insurance is just
Yeah.
awful for everyone.
Yep. So sometimes the order is nothing more than, parent whatever A is going to pay the health insurance and parent B gets no child support, but we will have health insurance for the kids.
Yeah.
And then the parties will have to divide up any unreimbursed medical expenses
Okay.
in accordance with your child support order. Your child support officer will do that in your order.
Okay, so just break that down a little bit
Yeah.
more. So unreimbursed medical expenses, we're talking about you had to take Junior in for
Braces. That's
Braces.
the big one.
Okay.
Braces.
That's what I was
Because
going to ask you. What those things?
Typically, braces are not covered
Okay.
by insurance. And if they are, they're just partially covered.
Okay.
So there's a
So a
lot,
lot
of
of money
out
there.
of pocket. Yes.
Yeah.
So the child support order will designate how you're going to split that up. And if it's a, $45,000-$30,000, division in your,
Mm-hmm.
separation in your incomes, then it's likely that you're going to do that same kind of division. Like the $45,000 person a year will pay a higher percentage, and the other one will pay a lower percentage.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, it is Wendy and Josh. This is a couple of things with Wendy and Josh every second Thursday at 3:15. We got Wendy O'Brien here from Proden and O'Brien Law here in Uniontown. We are talking about child support today, and we are deep into it. So I don't know if you had a next point, but I know that we were going to get into the difference between like spousal support versus alimony,
Yeah.
whatever that word is.
Alimony pendente lite. We're going to go a little Latin here.
That.
You know,
that.
since we have a new pope, we'll throw
Yeah,
in some
why
Latin
not?
today.
Pope Leo
Yeah.
from Chicago. Very cool.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, so let's jump from child support. Now, often with separation, there's also the ability to file for spousal support, which is the support of the dependent spouse. So basically the spouse who made a lower income for whatever reason during the marriage. They would be potentially entitled to some form of support. Now, it's called three different things, but it's essentially the same thing. It's just at different times in a divorce or separation proceeding.
Okay.
So spousal support would be what a support is called when there's no divorce action filed.
Okay.
So, and you do have to prove entitlement to get spousal support.
Okay.
And that's an interesting
So
thing
what
to do.
what goes into that? What does that mean?
So entitlement would be you have to prove that you are the dependent spouse. So if you, again, with the same example of child support, if you wait 6 months after separation before you go to file, that's defense that they could use against you. Well, you're not really dependent because you didn't go file immediately.
You were surviving for those 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. If you leave your spouse and go live with another person of the opposite sex in a relationship, you may not be entitled to spousal support.
Okay.
Because that's something that is a factor they look at.
Because that's somebody who also could be providing for you.
Yes. What is the separation reason?
Okay.
And is someone else supporting you?
Yeah.
Basically.
Now, let me ask you, once folks get into these situations, do they take those things into consideration as far as boyfriends, girlfriends, stuff like that?
So the only time, and this is important to know, the only time it's relevant, very relevant, is if it's spousal support before a divorce action is filed. Once a divorce action is filed, the courts really don't care. As long as the divorce action is pending, the dependent spouse is most likely going to get some form of APL, alimony pendente lite, which means alimony during the course of the divorce is essentially the translation. And we call it shorten and call it APL.
APL.
So that is a short-term spousal payment, basically.
Okay.
And entitlement is not required.
Okay.
If you have an affair and you still are the dependent spouse, as far as financially you make a lower amount, you could still be entitled to.
So you could actually be the party that potentially created the separation or drove the wedge there.
I hate that about APL, but it is true.
That's how that works.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But it's not forever. It's very short term.
Yeah.
And again, it's based on your incomes and it's based on a lot of factors. I mean, if you're living in the marital home and your ex-spouse is paying the mortgage for you, the marital home, they're going to get credit for that.
Right.
If they're paying your car payment, if they're paying your health insurance, if they're paying your car insurance, health insurance, cell phone bill.
So there's a lot of factors that go into it. It may, so if when you separate and you're going through a divorce proceeding, you're continuing to cover a lot of the things that you covered before, that's going to be seen and recognized by the court.
It will. Yeah.
And that will obviously drive down whatever that APL cost might have been.
Yep. And you need to have proof of all that. What is it you're paying on their behalf? And you should, in most cases. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, this is not a blanket for every case. Every case is different, and you should consult an attorney about your specific case. But generally speaking, if you're paying expenses for your ex-spouse or your, separated spouse, you should have proof of those, and you could get credit for them.
Keep an eye on this stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're in this situation, it's very important to probably keep good records, keep track of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Especially if you are doing things above board.
Yeah.
And you're being a good person and a good human. Yeah. Those things will all come back to you. And this is my philosophy on life outside of our show.
Yeah.
Those things will come back to you. If you're doing the right things for the right reasons, in general, it's going to help you.
Yeah.
So.
It definitely will.
So that brings us. Are we almost up to the fun word?
Well, almost.
Okay. All right.
Let me do. I want to talk a little bit about actual alimony, because a lot of people question me. I've been married 10 years. How long can I get alimony for? Well, I want you to know that in Pennsylvania, there's no black or white rule of law on that. It's all dependent and up to the discretion of the court.
Okay.
There are 17 factors that they look at.
Okay.
Yeah. To determine whether or not you are entitled to receive alimony.
Okay.
And a lot of it comes down to, what was the history of the marriage in your incomes? Did you support your spouse to obtain a higher paying job during the course of your marriage? So I like to give the example, and shout out to my husband. When we first got married and I was in law school, I did work part-time, but he worked 3 jobs.
He was helping make it go.
Yes. He made it happen for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got through law school because he was working 3 jobs.
Busting his butt. Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And then he went back to school and I worked while he went back to school.
Right.
So it's a team effort, but I see this a lot where we have a doctor maybe that went to
it
medical
takes forever.
school. It takes a long time. And then you have a spouse at home that's running the house and paying bills, and something happens and you end up separating, and the doctor has a very high income and the other spouse not so much. Yeah, that's probably a pretty strong factor that you're going to pay alimony for a period of time.
Yeah.
Because getting that person to your income is highly unlikely.
Yeah. What is the long? I mean, have you seen alimonies last for years?
Yeah, I actually just had a case where the court awarded alimony for the remainder of my client's life.
Wow. So that can happen.
It can happen.
Depending on the mitigating circumstances of what
absolutely
is in each individual case.
Yeah.
Huh.
And in full transparency, the spouse I had was fully disabled and had been for at least 2 decades during their marriage. So obviously they were the dependent spouse.
Yeah.
And they would never have the earning capacity that the other party did and does.
Yeah.
So
so again, I'm not the judge or jury, but it sounds like it makes sense in that situation.
Yeah,
it's not like it wasn't like a necessarily like a penalty to them.
No,
this was what they were doing to be fair.
Yeah, divorce law is one of those things where it's not really meant to be fair. The word is equitable, and that can mean so many things. It may not seem fair that you pay alimony for the rest of your life to your ex-spouse, but at the same time, let's say you were together, you were gonna pay for that spouse.
Yep.
If your marriage didn't end,
and they were you were responsible for them because of the situation they were in, and you knew that.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to filial support.
Yeah.
I don't even, and I journalism, that's what I do.
Okay.
I don't know the word filial. So.
All right, so this is very uncommon.
Okay.
Very uncommon, but it does happen. Filial is, I looked it up in the Oxford Dictionary, it means of or due from a son or daughter.
So child owing.
A child owing support to a parent.
Okay.
Essentially is what it is.
Now I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So how does this happen?
So, and actually the statute, I did bring a copy of it so we could look at it.
Yeah, I'm just very interested.
The statute is at 23 PA CSA 4603. And basically it's the relative's liability for support of another. And it can be, if you are an indigent person,
okay,
you can receive support from a spouse.
Yes.
You can receive support from a child. And you can also receive support from your parent if you are indigent.
Okay. So my guess is there'd be a lot of burden of proof on indigent.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So one big one is you're incompetent somehow. Like, maybe
something's wrong.
Maybe you're in a very serious accident and you've become incapacitated. And
right.
You can't work. You can't take care of yourself. You need full-time care.
Yes.
You can file for support against, a parent, child, or
Have
spouse.
you ever had this
Yes.
case? You have.
I have, yeah.
So, because again, and we're talking about good humans and all that kind of stuff, you would like to think, in most cases, that if you knew that somebody in your life was one of your loved ones and close-knit in your family, that everyone would rally together and figure that out.
Yeah.
But it sounds like not always does that happen.
Nope. And someday, maybe in the near future, we'll talk, because it's on our list.
Yeah.
About estates and contesting estates or wills.
Okay.
But one of the big ones I see is we have, a mom who has 4 or 5 children. Yeah. And you have one child who takes care of that parent.
Yes.
And
I see this all the time.
Yeah, and
seen it in our own family.
Right.
So yeah,
the other 3 kids just go about doing their thing, and whether it's they blame, whatever the one child who has the mom or dad, or whether it's something they've done themselves, this is normally the circumstance. So that child who is caring for the parent
Okay.
will file on behalf of that parent
Okay.
to receive support from their siblings to
Wow.
help take care
Okay.
of the parent.
So that makes good sense. So it's a little different. This type of support situation is arising potentially in contentious situations where there may have been a falling out prior to or during.
Yeah.
And then so is that something open at any period of time? So you're 5 years into caring for mom and you realize that your 3 siblings haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Is it open at that point still?
You can still go file. You don't waive it.
So it's not like the one where you have to file right away.
No, you don't. You can't waive it. It's not. You can file at any time, and anybody can file if they are incapacitated and can't file for themselves. Someone can file on their behalf.
Okay.
Well. There are agencies that can do that too. No, in nursing homes, we'll seek them out. Some often, if they need some additional money to help take care of the indigent and incompetent or incapable person.
Yeah, and you like to think, we like to think that, and I think that in a majority of cases, the families do figure out ways to work it out.
Yeah.
Everybody contributes as best they can. Obviously, we all come from different financial situations, and in most cases, they're able to figure that out. But this is recourse if you can't.
Yeah. And this one's a little bit different because this is not done through our domestic relations office, like spousal support and alimony and APL and child support.
Okay.
This is done through the court directly. So the court will actually schedule a hearing after they receive a petition, schedule a hearing, and take evidence.
Okay.
And it does come down to, there's some defenses. Let me talk about that.
Yeah.
It comes down to, can you actually afford to pay or help take care of your indigent, parent, child, or spouse?
Right.
Because if you can't afford it, the court's not going to order that you have to do that. So there is a formula that they use. It's something like six. It can't be more than 6 times the excess of your liability. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, stuff that
so
makes my head hurt. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
They have a method to their madness,
okay. All right.
In other words, so they will decide what is your need for your household income and your dependents, because maybe you have children too. And what is your need, and then how much can you afford to support your other loved one?
And I see an exception you have written here, which was interesting too. A child is not required to support a parent that abandoned them for 10 years when they were a minor. Yeah. So I guess basically that's protecting again this child down the road when somebody for the indigent parent or the indigent parent themselves tries to potentially extort them, basically.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing to do with you as a kid, but now I want your money.
Yeah. Now I need you to support me.
Yeah.
So that's a nice one written into the.
I like that. That makes me happy. And you would think that, I imagine probably being an attorney, you see a lot of exceptions into stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I find that a lot of times it's good to see it there because it gives some protection to people. Yeah. Not everybody.
Well, I think these acts serve a purpose, and our legislature and our courts have really attempted to make sure they're serving the purpose they are intended to serve, rather than give someone some kind of lavish lifestyle they don't necessarily need or should have.
Right. So in the case with the indigent too, what factors are they looking at to kind of say they do it and they determine that filial support is due? How are they looking at the same kind of factors as we did for child support?
A little bit different. It's very uber focused on the needs of the indigent person, particularly with regard to their care.
Yeah.
So their health care, their personal care, maybe their medications.
Okay.
Medications are a big one because of how expensive they can be.
Absolutely, especially if you don't have insurance.
Yeah. And if you need 24-hour care, that's a big factor.
Okay, so they're focusing a lot on the physical health and basically the keeping of this person.
Yeah, Joe Schmo who, dad gets up and goes to work a couple of times a week and, maybe he's a greeter at Walmart and he can't file for support against you.
Okay, so these are specific cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's meant for very specific people who are absolutely in need.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, I'm Josh Krysak. This is Wendy O'Brien. We are coming to you every Thursday at 3:15. A couple of things with Wendy and Josh. She's from the Proden and O'Brien law firm. She knows all kinds of fun stuff about the law, and we're both complete nerds and love to talk about really goofy things and get deep down rabbit holes. So it's a perfect time. We hope you're enjoying it. But we've been talking about child support, spousal support, alimony, APT, APL, alimony pendente lite.
Yeah. You got
Okay, there you go. Pope Leo, thanks. And filial support, which I didn't know anything about. So all very interesting stuff. And you said at the outset, if you're paying child support or you're involved in those cases, you're likely not paying enough.
Yeah. I just, every time I get a child support order, I think, wow.
Yeah.
I think you could do more. But, you know, I feel like a lot of people do set money aside. You know, maybe it's, you know, in a bank account or savings account or something for their children, the outside the court order. These amounts that are prescribed by our legislation are, I think, extremely low.
Okay.
Particularly with child support.
Yes.
Because I think the needs of our kids should be the foremost.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to support a child on your own as a single parent, you know, of two children.
Yeah.
For the example I gave earlier, where one parent's making $45,000 a year and the other parent's making $30,000 a year, you're getting $819 a month.
That's
for
so low.
two kids.
Yeah, so low.
Yeah.
So do they, let me ask you this, and for those, you know, in that situation, do they take into account what is left over for the person paying? Not
No,
always, or
it's-
not at all?
It's very unlikely. Now, you will get credit for some things. So, for example, if you're going to be the payor, you're the one paying the child support, and you're also paying the daycare costs.
Yes.
Maybe you have daycare. You're paying the daycare every week. You're going to get credit for that.
Okay. That's kind of what I was
Yeah.
getting at. So if daycare costs for the week is $150 and you're the one footing that bill and you got the $800, you're going to get that reduced.
You'll get a reduction for advancing child care expenses.
Okay.
And we talked a little bit earlier about you know, some medical expenses. Some children have extraordinary expenses.
Of course.
Like medical procedures or
Yeah.
Last summer my son was involved in an ATV accident, was life flighted.
Exactly.
So we had the life flight, we had the ambulance, we had the surgery. You
And
know,
that stuff adds up quick.
It adds up very quick.
Yes.
Very quick. So those are extraordinary expenses, all of which, you know, would be taken into consideration.
Right. How you were helping during that time would all. So basically, you're getting credit for the things that you're doing that are the right things.
What you don't get credit for, and I have a lot of people do, you know, bring me their electric bill, their gas bill, their car payment, their cell phone bill.
Not the same.
No, you're not getting credit for those because the statute and the legislation has already considered that you're going to have your own household expenses.
Yeah.
When they calculate this, they consider that you have to have money to pay your own bills.
Yeah.
But so does your, you know, children's primary caregiver.
Right, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So this has been extremely informative. I hope you found it informative. This is a fun part of the list here, though, because Wendy came and we have about 4.5 minutes left, but she came in a couple of things in Wendy fashion. So let's go through your couple of things.
Yeah, so a couple of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up this weekend is Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah.
May 11th.
Yes.
I just got done telling you don't pay enough child support. You need to, you know, take a step back and look at it from a different perspective. Why don't you also make sure your children have a gift for their mother?
That's right. Even if it's a handmade card.
Yes.
Depending on their age, that makes perfect sense.
Let them pick flowers.
Right.
Them, you know, let them do something. Like
let them
color
help you
pictures.
make breakfast for her.
Yeah. Make sure mom has something.
Yeah.
Treat her this weekend.
I agree. It's important.
Hint,
Thank you
hint.
to all of our moms out there. And
Yes.
if you're listening, Wendy O'Brien's family, she's right here.
Yeah, so don't forget that. Okay.
Yeah.
Second, you and I both love Phil Michael.
We do.
Has a special place in our heart.
Yes.
And I miss him every day.
Me too.
So his wife, Trisha, and some of her friends and family members have started the Philip J. Michael Foundation.
Yes.
And they do award scholarships, and I know she's already awarding a scholarship this year, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
But they have their first official fundraiser coming up May 18th.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So I'm excited about this too.
Yeah.
It's a 5K. They're looking for sponsors, participants. They have Chinese auctions. You can find out about it on Facebook.
Yeah.
She has a Facebook. There's a Philip Michael Foundation Facebook page as well. Philip J. Michael. As you said, Phil was a great influence in our lives, a great friend. So this is a great thing to support. He was all about community. He would have loved this show.
Yeah.
He would have texted us both and said how good we were doing, because that's the kind of guy he was. So, yeah, we miss him a lot. So if you have a chance to get engaged in that, you have time to participate. They're still looking for all that kind of stuff. So
please do. Please support it. It's a great cause.
Absolutely.
In the memory of a wonderful person who loved our county, who loved our area.
He did.
Okay, next.
Yes.
Little bit public service announcement. We're walking into prom season, graduation season. Very exciting. I do have a senior, so we're going through all that. It's fun and exciting and scary.
Yeah.
But let's remind our kids and the students, let's use our heads this season.
Yes.
Let's not drink and drive.
Yes.
Let's not go out partying and do dumb stuff.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
No.
The legal troubles you will have and it could cause you and jeopardize your future.
Right.
Is actually you can't even express how many
right.
problems it could cause.
In addition to potentially putting your life at risk, other people's lives at risk, go have fun, be safe, have fun, be the responsible one. And right now it may feel like the dull thing to do, but do that and you'll feel better. You can still have a great time. I was the kid always being good, and I still had tons of fun. I don't know about you, but that's how I was.
No, I was definitely.
Yeah.
I was a nerd.
Yeah,
my husband
me
calls
too.
me that all the
That's
time.
all right. That's all right.
Yeah, you have a driver. Be smart. Educate your kids.
Yep.
I don't want to see you in my office with a DUI.
No, please no.
Okay, maybe we'll have one more. Let's see. Okay,
all right.
A couple minutes.
Yeah.
So Chick-fil-A is open. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Have you been to the new Chick-fil-A?
Well, no, but some of our staff here got in line, so we had Chick-fil-A. So I haven't actually had to go. So.
Okay, all right. Well, go see those guys. My cousin Michaela and her fiance Key are the owners and operators of our
Okay, so you have an in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Go see them, and they are so much fun. And,
all right.
And so, they're so welcoming and pleasant, and it's just wonderful.
Eat more chicken.
Go eat more chicken.
All right, that's good. And the last thing we were going to talk about.
Our Pope. How exciting is that today?
It's extremely exciting. TJ and he just came back in the room. We were watching it kind of happen live. I was at lunch with our mutual friend Mark Rafel, saw the white smoke, came back. We watched him get named.
I couldn't believe it. It was an American, and it was so fast. 4 votes, I think.
Pretty quick. Pretty quick and pretty exciting. Seems like a very nice human.
Pope Leo from Chicago originally. So
that's right.
Oh, and he went to Villanova University. Did you know that?
I didn't, but I do now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, Wendy, it's been awesome to have you again. I look forward to talking to you again next month.
This goes so fast.
Yeah, it does. So this was a couple of things with Wendy and Josh. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.